on the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Road demolition exercise to commence on Saturday. I have my guest joining me live, and that's Kenneth Ikenwa, a social and political analyst. Mr. Kenneth, glad to have you join me this evening.
Good evening. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, let me start by asking what's the impact of this demolition exercise to commence, regarding in view of the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway?
All right, let me go straight and quickly to the point. It's going to have a lot of multidimensional social economic impacts. But let me be a little bit academic by saying that the first impact we're going to be having with the execution of this highway, which is a fallout of what is going to commence on Saturday, is what is known as gentrification. And I say that again, gentrification. And what does that mean? It means that there is usually a displacement of people, a displacement of neighborhood, especially by those that are wealthy or those that are policymakers, with the view of trying to bring up projects that have the claims of having better multiplier effects for the economy, whether in the short term or in the long term. Now, another socio-economic impact is that apart from bringing about gentrification, there will be a great displacement at the rural and urban levels. And that will usually come with a lot of sociological consequences. It will mean that the poverty rates of people who are going to be moved away from their settlements, ancestral settlements, may increase. And some of these people may have to resort to other alternative vices to be able to keep up with their standard of living or to at least survive. Then secondly, we're going to experience a lot of unemployment, most likely in the short term, and underemployment. It will mean that some of the people along these coastal regions who have established businesses most likely will have to lay off their staff or close off their businesses. And those who are certified to work in some kind of businesses like the hospitality businesses and any other kind of business along that corridor would have to go and look for lesser paying jobs and have to downgrade their quality of life. Lastly, we should be expecting an inefficient utilization of the factors of productivity and production nationally. What does that mean? It means that, for instance, some settlements and some areas that go by this coastal region that hitherto were available for productive ventures may have to close down and have to be given up just for a road to pass through. Now, if we look at the cost-benefit analysis of that, the question on our lips should be, is this the first thing that should appear on the scale of preference as a priority for the federal government?
Yes, I was going to chip that in, Mr. Ikenwa. I mean, there's been various criticisms from various quarters, political figures weighing into this demolition exercise, to commence on Saturday, and some have tagged it as a misplaced priority. What's your response to that?
Well, it's a beautiful idea, no doubt. I mean, it is the way to go. But when you look at the scale of preference, vis-a-vis what is obtainable in Nigeria today, the multiple challenges that we're having in the country today, challenges of insecurity, challenges of food insecurity, child poverty, food poverty, and emotional challenges that people are having even in the country. I do not think that this is the best or first priority that the government should be thinking of expending in the excess of about 10 trillion naira in commitment to. Escalating that commitment at this point in time doesn't come or sit well, it doesn't make economic sense or strategic sense. Now, there are other roads in the country that need government attention. The Sango-Ota Road is there. I was there 2 weeks ago. It is not passable. The Benin-Auchi Express Road is there. There's so many roads in the country that are hotspots for crime, hotbeds for crime, that the government should pay attention to and not carry on with this particular one at this point in time. Given the state of the economy, the stage we're in our economic life cycle, in the stage of recovery, I do not think this expenditure and the strategy with which it's been implemented is in the best interest of the collective of Nigerians.
Now, considering the projected completion time for this project of 8 years, what challenges might arise, from this construction phase? And how do you think the government can better address these challenges or potential delays?
Well, my scholarship in the last 15 years has gone through different areas through different disciplines. And one of the things we have seen in Nigeria today is that as at 2006, there were over 2,000 different abandoned government projects that were contracts that were given out by different governments from the military era into the democratic era. Now, fast forward 18 years in that trajectory, we would expect that that number should have either doubled or tripled. Now, if this project is not seen through with this administration for 8 years, and some are saying it's a project that may even last for 30 years, that will mean that we would have a lot of economic challenges to deal with going into the future. But I think even if this project were to go through, aside from the social economic impacts that I've identified, most particularly that which has to do with gentrification of certain places and certain settlements, I think that the most important failure with respect to this project, or actually this challenge with respect to this project, is that the strategy that was employed for implementing this project is not according to best global practice. Now, for a project of this gargantuan size, one would have expected a thorough, total public-private partnership on it, and a particular type which will have meant that there should have been a bidding process, which is one of the complaints by many people. Nobody knows how transparent that process was. And there should have been a process, a strategy in place that will have led to people taking up the project on their own, building it, operating it for a number of years, and transferring it back to the government. And not the government taking the very, very scarce resources in the excess of 10 trillion naira to commit to this project and expect that it will be done on record time. If the strategy were different, we would have less need to worry. But the strategy of wholesale contracting of the project out with taxpayers' money at this point in time, it begs a lot of questions, given the stage we've found ourselves in our economic life cycle.
Now, in closing, Kenneth, how would you advise government, in carrying out future projects of national importance or consequences, going forward? How best should they carry out projects like this, particularly when it concerns demolition of properties?
The first thing the government should always do is to have an empathetic frame of mind, an empathetic strategic frame. Engage first and foremost with the people. The second thing the government should do is to ensure that there are good governance mechanisms around the choice of projects and around the execution and implementation of this kind of projects. Like I said initially, one of the major complaints is that the processes around which this project and the contracts were given out are shrouded in some kind of pseudo secrecy, and we don't know what is actually involved. We do not even know the actual amount that is involved. Now, the last thing I would advise the government to do is to get the appropriate eggheads, use the intellectuals in Nigeria, bring them on board and reason along with them and get ideas from them. Now, these ideas can be contesting ideas or competing ideas. It is very important. Most importantly, for projects like this, long-term projects like this, I do not expect the government to be violating global best practices on going wholesale in investing in such projects. The best thing is to look for partners that will take over the project and will have probably a BOT arrangement, a build, operate, and transfer arrangement, and that would be of less burden to the Nigerian people and of less burden to the pocket of the federal government. The last thing I want to tell the government to do and expect government to do is to always check if this is the priority, if this is what we need at this point in time. If you ask me, this is not a priority, and I think the government should please, 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 please return to the status quo.
Thank you so much for your time on the news. Kenneth Ikenwa, social and political analyst. Thank you once again.
Let me also appreciate News Central for taking the lead on this among media houses in bringing the challenges of those that will be on the negative receiving end of this to the Nigerian public. It's a good job and kudos to you. God bless News Central. God bless Nigeria. Shalom Emeka.